what is NSD Double Wood?
So NSD Double Wood is our first ever single cask release of a bourbon barrel only maturation. It's also the first time we've ever released a whiskey on the back of our collaboration with the Never Say Die bourbon brand.
So Double Wood, what does Double Wood actually mean?
Double wood means that the whiskey has been matured in two separate casks, one after the other, and unlike a finish, which would typically involve using the second cask for, let's say, 6 to 12 months, double wood implies that the second cask has been used for a longer period of time. So in this particular case, both casks were used for a very similar period of time for maturation.
Tell us a little bit about the two casks that we used for this release.
So the first cask was a Heaven Hills Distillery ex-bourbon barrel, so first fill, so only used once before for whiskey making by ourselves, and then that whiskey was taken out of that barrel and put into the second barrel, which was a Never Say Die first fill ex-bourbon barrel.
Working with Never Say Die since 2022, can you tell us a little bit about how this relationship came about?
So the relationship with Never Say Die Bourbon really came about from decades ago through friendships, through whiskey, one of whom started importing some bourbon into the UK, came across this new bourbon brand called Never Say Die, who were looking for a partner to collaborate with in the UK, where they could ship their bourbon still in barrels for the maturation to be finished in the UK climate. So yeah, it was a nice little story of a long-standing friendship. It's great to be working with another startup business, another challenger whiskey business. We, having received the bourbon barrels from Never Say Die, we store them in our warehouse for their kind of final leg of their maturation, and then we're bottling the bourbon on behalf of Never Say Die. But the beauty for us, the beauty for our whiskey, is that once we've emptied their bourbon barrel, we then get to use that ex-bourbon barrel for our own whiskey maturation. And because the bourbon barrels are in our own warehouse, we can literally empty the bourbon out on one day, and then the following day, or certainly within the same week, put our whiskey into that barrel. And that's a very unique position in the UK.
If you could just explain what are the similarities or differences or both between the Works Bourbon Barrel, which is part of our Works Provenance Core range, and this single cask bourbon release.
So the key differences are firstly the double wood. So the whiskey's had exposure to, let's say, first fill, relatively fresh oak used for bourbon maturation twice in the case of NSD Double Wood, as opposed to once in the case of our core bourbon barrel release. And then the second key difference between those two barrels is the bourbon itself. So the rye content in the Never Say Die bourbon is more than double the rye content in the Evan Williams bourbon that was in the Heaven Hill Distillery barrel that we used in the first instance.